Before we start tonight's program, this is a reminder that this episode will address various topics related to gambling and absolutely will be centered around multiple sclerosis. These may be sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion, as always, is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and/or mental health regime. If you're looking for options with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. It's 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and is a confidential free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Importantly, if you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call a Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. Those resources are also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And then, because we're talking about it tonight, it's important for me to talk about this. If you're looking for options down this road against compulsive gambling, contact the National Council on Problem Gambling helpline at 1-800-522-4700. Again, 1-800-522-4700. Or go to the National Council on Problem Gambling's website at ncpgambling.org. You can also call 1-800-GAMBLER. Again, 1-800-GAMBLER. Bet with your head, not over it. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about the other topic of tonight's show, and that of my fight with multiple sclerosis. It's been a fight that has been paramount in my mind for the last 16 months, but quite frankly, the last 11 years. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Again, 1-800-344-4867, or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. Also, as I did last year, I'll be taking part in the Walk MS 2022 in Media, Pennsylvania on April 23rd. We are raising money for this and the National MS Society through a Venture to a Cure's fundraising page at rebrand.ly/adventure to a cure. Again, rebrand.ly/adventure to a cure. Thank you to all of you who have donated money to this amazing organization, or have even gone to the National MS Society to learn more about demyelination and multiple sclerosis. It touches me and over to 1 million people in this country who have multiple sclerosis in so many ways, and we appreciate all of you. And on that, let's begin. Tonight, we're going to talk about two things. One, we're going to talk about my fourth infusion of ocrevus, which is going to happen on Thursday, and how that medication has been very important with my battle with multiple sclerosis. The other thing we're going to talk about tonight is this. Today, I'm 2 years from gambling. I have last gambled on April 12th, 2020, and I have been free of gambling since then. We'll talk about compulsive gambling and how it has become part of this story. And we're going to talk about ocrevus. Two very distinct topics, one incredible program, because this is the Venture Forward. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the Venture Forward. I am John Venturini, a recovering addict of compulsive gambling, overeating, obesity, and alcoholism, and it is an honor and pleasure to see all of you tonight on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and also on the Venture to a Cure's fundraising page at rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. We will be simulcasting the program on there until the end of May. So we'll be on all 5 services from now until then. And as I mentioned before, it's an honor and pleasure to see all of you. It has been an incredible day, but also an incredible story up to now. In the sense that I'm really looking at a medication that has helped me considerably with my multiple sclerosis and that of ocrevus. And we'll talk more about that in moments. But we're also talking about me not gambling anymore. And I've been gambling for so long in this life. For me to get to 2 years not gambling is something that I never thought was possible. I didn't think that I had that sort of conviction in me to do that until I realized how much it was destroying me. So we'll talk about the gambling story, we'll talk about ocrevus, and then we have a little surprise that you probably know about, and we'll talk about that at the end of the program as well. But before we get started, let's say hello to all of you out there. Who wins the door prize tonight? That will go to Jamie Rose on YouTube, who says, "Evening, everyone." Good evening, Jamie. Hope you are doing well. We have Matt Haas on Facebook, who says, "Dude, hey, dude. How's it going, dude?" Matt Haas, co-host of VF Talks on Friday nights, and maybe part of a surprise later on. We'll tell you more. Stay tuned. Marilyn says, "Hi, JV. Hope everything went well for you today. 3 waves, 3 purple hearts, 3 waves, and 3 blue hearts back at you. I hope they will go well on Thursday, but they did go well for me today for sure, and it's good to see you tonight as always." And we have Paul Burke, the other co-host of VF Talks on YouTube, who says, "Hey, everyone. Hey, Paul. Hope you're doing well this afternoon, my friend." Awesome Wood Things says, "Hey, I'm over here on the YouTubes now." Awesome Wood Things. A wonderful production of Mr. Matt Haas. Good to see you again. And then Paul says, "That's really great. You quit gambling, man." Yeah, I'm really thankful. I think about the amount of money I spent gambling, and we'll get to those numbers. We'll revisit those numbers in a little bit, but it's scary. It's scary that I did that, but it's also very promising that I don't anymore. So, nevertheless, good to see you. Jamie says, "Congratulations on 2 years." Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you and this project for sure. So let's get started. In the sense that this is episode 4.19, ocrevus round 4, and 2 years not gambling. 2 different topics, but both have a major importance today. Before we do that, let's talk about the Walk MS Media 2022, as we did in the disclaimer. We're doing that on April 23rd, 2022 in Media, Pennsylvania. The walk is at 10 a.m., and we are still raising money for it at rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. Good news, I would say great news, that the goal for the walk has been reached. We had a goal of $80,000 for the walk. We're at $81,621. Which is incredible stuff given that we still have a little bit of time before the walk. Personally, for my team, A Venture to a Cure, we're at about $650 right now, and we have a goal of $1,000. So if you get a chance, rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. Every dollar, everything you do for that site and for the National MS Society, again, gratefully appreciated. We appreciate all of you for doing that. So let's talk about the timeline. And before I do that, let me go back to Maine for a second. In the sense that it has been something that I shuffled underneath the rug back in 2011, 2012. It was a major event. It was something that had the desensitization on the top of my head, left side of my head, down the right hand side of my body. I had optic neuritis where I couldn't see things straight, had a hard time hearing things, and I was definitely going through some major loss of function. And went to multiple hospitals, 2 or 3 hospitals, and a specialist in southeastern Connecticut. And, at the end of the day, it ended up being a demyelinating disorder. That's what it was prescribed as. It was basically diagnosed as, rather. But as we went through the 2010s, what was there was multiple sclerosis. It was just shuffled under the rug. We get to the end of 2020 and starting to feel it in October of 2020 and reached a crescendo on New Year's Eve. And I'll show the timeline in a second again. But it was a problem. In the beginning of 2021, it involved more MRIs, more tests, and a diagnosis that was arguably 10 years overdue in that of multiple sclerosis. That caused another round of Solu-Medrol, which is a very heavy steroid, 5 days, drip, 1 gram a day, and then ocrevus, which is, funny enough, the drug that I'm going to get infused on Thursday. But let's go back to the graphic and talk exactly what the timeline is. It is a very deceiving timeline because you think, oh, there had to be an event in 15 or 16 or 17. But as we've talked to on the show before, multiple sclerosis is a very individualistic disorder, very individualistic disease. It affects people in many different ways, and it's totally dependent on where your lesions are. In a case that was evident in me in 2011 and 2012, and then basically was quiet for arguably 8 years until what happened fourth quarter of 2020, is a little bit eye-opening, but not surprising. And that's where we are, right? So that happened as I mentioned, on New Year's Eve of 2020, I spent in the ER of Chester County Hospital with an event. But because we were dealing with a global health crisis, I went in and got 150, not even 150 milligrams of prednisone and was sent home, instead of the right call being a gram of Solu-Medrol for 5 days. Nevertheless, over the next 3 to 4 weeks and a couple more tests, it was obvious that I had multiple sclerosis and was quickly prescribed Solu-Medrol. Had basically someone come to the house with a 1 gram drip of Solu-Medrol every day for 5 days, but also with a plan of attack because I have relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis, of taking something called ocrevus, which is something that is basically targeting my B cells, the CD20 marker of my B cells. And it's an infusion. Happens twice a year. But that all started last year. The first infusion was late March of 2021. And that's where we've been. We got actually a slide that talks to that. Ocrevus medications taken twice a year is a 4-hour infusion. It's not something that you get a quick shot in the arm and it's done. No, you're sitting there for a while. And what happened is your first dose is done in 2 half doses. That's what happened in March and April of 2021. Every infusion thereafter is over 3 hours of full dose, but the thing is they have started to do it faster. So the infusion I had in October of 21 was done in about 2.5 hours. As we know, MS is caused by your immune system attacking the myelin surrounding the nerves in your brain. So basically, it's attacking yourself. And it's all dependent on where it's attacking and where the lesions form. And wherever those lesions are, it's blocking specific nerves that could basically take care of certain parts of your function. In my case, it was feeling in the top of my head, but also to a certain degree, handwriting. Ocrevus targets certain B cells, as B cells play a central role in MS development as they activate the immune system. So it's an autoimmune disorder. When we've been dealing with what we've been dealing with the last 2 years, and we're talking about getting vaccines and everything, it's a scary premise for someone who has an autoimmune disorder like multiple sclerosis to go for a vaccine. And yet, more times than not, we're told to do that. So eventually, that's what we do. We're very careful on the timing of when we get the vaccine now. So on Thursday, I go for the next round of ocrevus. That means I don't get a booster shot for 13 weeks past that. So timing plays a very pivotal role, because what is ocrevus doing? It's targeting my B cells. Basically one of the fundamental pieces in an immune system. So the two things are working against each other. But I have a really great set of doctors over at University of Pennsylvania and also my PCP, and we're working through this the best way we can. Specifically with ocrevus, it's targeting a protein called CD20, which is one of the markers of the B cell. It doesn't kill the entire B cell chain. It kills CD20 and its adjacent sort of markers. So it's a specific sort of medication. One would say, well, isn't that chemo? It's not really chemo because it's targeted. Chemo would go for a full swoop. With something like ocrevus, it is targeted. It knows exactly what it's going against. As I mentioned before, the first doses were March 31st and April 14th of 2021. Had a full dose on October 14th, and the next one is Thursday. The half doses were, the first doses were 300 milligrams. The full dose in October was 600, and the one coming up on Thursday will be 600. And I will go to Ming because we had some comments. Jamie says, so scary not having anything happen for that long and then boom. Yeah, very much so. Very scary, to say the least. And then there's some comments about Paul's new hairstyle and his thumb. Very observant, sir. I got rid of the purple-haired thumbnail because I feel like that was fake promises for anyone clicking, hoping for a purple-haired purple-haired streamer. Wow, it would help if I could read correctly, although the mispronunciation's fun. Purple-haired streamer. And then Jamie goes on to say, yeah, Paul, I heard people talking about the lie that was your hair misleading. The purple-haired streamer that you formerly were. That's one mispronunciation if you're scoring at home. So that's ocrevus. That's what I'm getting infused on Thursday. What does multiple sclerosis do? We've talked about this before, but it can cause visual disturbances in the sense that you get blurred vision. Optic neuritis, basically your eyeball is frozen. It doesn't move, which can cause major loss of vision or picking up image. Mental changes in sort of decreased concentration, memory loss, attention deficit, loss of sensation, sort of like what I had on top of my head with the desensitization on the top of my head, left side of my head, and down the right-hand side of my body. Depression, paranoia, wasn't really so much a play in this, but definitely on the periphery. Limb weakness has not been that much of a problem. There's been a little bit of a loss of gait, but truth be told, it did break my left ankle about 30 some odd years ago, so there's a little bit of that too in my gait sort of imbalance. Muscle spasms from time to time, and also bladder and bowel dysfunction. Again, you think about things that are governed by your nervous system, these are the things. So obviously something like multiple sclerosis is going to target those sort of areas for sure. If you think what a healthy brain looks like, it looks like the brain that's on the left-hand side. We who have multiple sclerosis have a brain that looks like the brain that's on the right-hand side. We have plaques. Lesions and plaques in basically our brain and down our central nervous system. And those sort of lesions basically block the communication. And depending on where those lesions are, is dependent on what sort of function, as seen on the previous slide, that becomes a problem. So it's something that I'm continuously dealing with, but taking a medication like ocrevus has helped considerably. I know that my MS is not progressing because any sort of flare-up is quickly halted, and my body is not hitting itself as hard as it would be, unlike I wasn't taking that sort of medication. So there's a lot to be said about what ocrevus does for MS patients, especially those who have relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis like I do. But nevertheless, Thursday will be an interesting day. I'll be at the University of Pennsylvania. I'll be at the Perelman Center getting the infusion, and then we'll see where we go from there. And then as far as any sort of booster for the other thing, that couldn't happen for about 13 weeks off of that. And then my next infusion of ocrevus won't be until October. So that's basically the game plan with respect to me tackling my MS. And also the sort of things that we have to take in consideration with other things we need to battle as we do in 2022. That said, let's talk about the other big story today. 2 years not gambling. Well, there are numbers. There are numbers on that board, as shown on every single episode of Venture Forward and VF Talks. 1,151 days tracking food, 312 pounds down, 1,048 days sober. So we're close to a birthday there or two on May 30th. That'd be 3 years of sobriety. With respect to this, my chip over here, it's a 2-year chip. It's 730 days of not gambling. And I think what is also very important to mention is, basically because of what gambling did to me, my financial health, 13 bankruptcy payments down, 47 to go. So gambling was such a devastating thing to me, if you think about it, because my financial health isn't the greatest. I basically spent a lot of money doing something that had no return to it. If the return, you'll argue, is, well, you had short-term entertainment, well, that's fine unless you're addicted to it. And then all you think about is exactly that. And we've taken the questionnaire before on this show. When your mind is basically revolving around it, you have a problem. You have a compulsion problem. And that is when it is not okay. I would dare say in this state, state and age, where inflation's hitting us left, right, and sideways, I don't think it's a good move for anybody. But that's neither here or there. That's up to you and you figuring that out for yourself. As I said before, if you think you have a problem with compulsive gambling, there are the numbers below me, 1-800-522-4700. You can go to ncpgambling.org, so it's the National Council of Problem Gambling, or you can always call 1-800-GAMBLER. Bet with your head, not over it. I would also say the other thing that is evident in that is being very honest and transparent with yourself. And it's also a state of mental health that, has to be grown over time. And we've talked about that before, but that's very much part of the reason why the Mayo Clinic has a definition on compulsive gambling. It's the uncontrollable urge to keep gambling despite the toll that it takes on your life, both mentally, physically, financially. You're willing to risk something you value in the hope of getting something of even greater value, which, spoiler alert, never happens, especially playing games that don't give you much of a chance. It stimulates the brain's reward system much like drugs or alcohol can, leading to addiction. So when we talk about cross-addiction, when we talk about the fact that I've had a problem with alcohol, I've had a problem with overeating and obesity, it shouldn't be a surprise that I had a problem with gambling as well. I have a problem with that sort of addiction sort of center in the sense of compulsion. You may continually chase bets that lead to losses, hide your behaviors, deplete savings, accumulate debt, or even resort to theft or fraud to support your addiction. Definitely led me into debt, so much so that I claimed bankruptcy. It's a serious condition that can destroy lives. Well, if you don't take care of it, it can definitely destroy your life. And although treating compulsive gambling can be challenging, many people who struggle with compulsive gambling have found help through professional treatment. Therapy and groups like Gamblers Anonymous have been very important to me as far as fighting this. The good news is I didn't do it by myself. I have support. And support's very important. When we think about the other things we talk about on the show, and that of overeating, obesity, well, there's the work of Overeaters Anonymous. When we talk about drinking and being an alcoholic, there's Alcoholics Anonymous. There's the groups that have been a godsend to me, in that of recovery groups, general sec recovery groups that are not necessarily anonymous groups. I'll mention Recovering Addict. I'll mention Sober James. I'll mention Real Recovery with Nicole. Shameless plugs for all three of them, because they are incredible people and incredible groups, and I appreciate and love them big time. We grow based on the community we keep. We grow based on the people and places and things that are around us. When we surround us with beneficial things, benevolent people, beneficial people, we stand to gain the greatest back. And then what we do is we end up giving that back too. That's how that community grows. A quick comment. Jamie says, we have regulars that buy lottery tickets and play the lottery at the grocery store I work at. One lady spends $300 every day. Take that in for a second. $300 every day. That's $2,100 a week. That's $8,400 a month, plus or minus. And that's nearly $100,000 a year. $300 a day. Does she have $100,000 a year to spend on lottery tickets? How much is her return? No, in the lottery, I'll guarantee you it's not a great return at all. So the thought of just extrapolating that is really sad. Jamie goes on to say support is crucial, without a doubt. Support is very crucial. Without support, we are definitely fighting a very tough fight. It's a tough fight nonetheless, no matter what it is. But if we have support in a group that's there to guide us, to give us the confidence, but also the wisdom to make us realize that we have to stop this behavior and look for the triggers that are causing us to do that, and working in from the inside. Support is very much fundamental. I mean, we talk about the communities that we build here. You think about what that life used to look like. I went to Atlantic City an awful lot. I was in Las Vegas a lot. I went to, the casinos of Pennsylvania a lot, Delaware, Maryland, Connecticut, that of the casinos in southeastern Connecticut. I spent way too much time in a casino when I could be doing other things with my life. Instead, I spent them in a very strange place without a clock on a wall, wasting countless numbers of hours and just giving into an addiction that wasn't doing anything good by me. Nothing. What? I have a platinum card with a certain casino chain? Does that get me anything? No, it gets me more and more into bankruptcy now, doesn't it? It gets me these wonderful wins you see here, but at what cost? I end up being bankrupt. So I could win this jackpot and that jackpot over there, but at the end of the day, what do I see for it? I see nothing. Because when you're addicted, when you have compulsion problems like that of gambling, you end up giving that money back and then some. So the things you see here, they weren't in my pocket for much long. They were gone as quickly as I got them. Numbers-wise, we've shown this slide before, but it's worth repeating. From an unsecured debt perspective, I had about $214,090 in total unsecured debt, with a $283,000 mortgage, so a total debt of right under $500K. $360,000 in assets, but that's the value of the home, let's face it. So the debt was about $137,000. So what could I do if my credit card payments were larger than anything? and I had a mortgage to pay, and I had this to claim bankruptcy. 13 payments down, 47 to go. There'll be another check made at the end of the month. But something I continued to work through because, hey, I know that in under 5 years, in under 4 years now, in 39, in nearly 4 years, I would say. 47 more payments. I'll be out of it. I'll be out of the plan because I'm paying the creditors slowly but surely through the U.S. bankruptcy court. I get choked up in thinking about that, and it's a lot there, but I know I'm working at it, and that's the most promising thing. Jamie says, but being platinum makes people feel special, right? Well, yeah. You got dinners in very fancy places that they're paying a little bit towards. You get hotel rooms, this and the other thing. But at the end of the day, they do that so you spend hours upon hours upon hours in the casino. So you give all that money back and 10 times as much. When you have a compulsion problem, guarantee you it's more than that. So platinum or being diamond or whatever, never a good thing. Jamie also says that'll be a glorious day, that last payment. I look forward to that day. I look forward to that day in 26. I look forward to that. And I know at that point, I'll be one step closer to living a much healthier life. If I haven't done that already, that'll just be another thing I've done to get myself to a better place. You think about the components that are at play with someone who has a gambling problem. It's that of an addictive personality. Looking for a personal loan would be great if I didn't have a problem with addiction. And you look at the number of financial services companies out there that offer personal loans. Well, you have good credit, they'll give it to you at a decent rate. If your credit is shaky, it's not going to be the greatest rate at all. And when you have 13, 14 credit cards, well, why not take out a personal loan? And then if that becomes a problem because you're spending it on the wrong things, then it becomes 2 personal loans, then 3, and then 4, and then 5. I had 5 personal loans at some point. It's, as the bottom one says, when my net income is 2/3 of how much I must pay in every month, debt consolidation, credit counseling are way overdue. We talked bankruptcy, and I ended up filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy last year. That's what gambling did to me, amongst a couple of other things, in the sense that I used to go out all the time and I used to do this, but more times than not, that money was wasted gambling. And they say you should never take the money out at the teller to go gamble, or borrow money to go gamble. But yet when you have a compulsion problem, that's what people do. They take out markers, they take out credit card payments and whatnot to fund their ugly, ugly addiction. And I was definitely one of those people. But the good news is, what do I have now? I have freedom from a crumbling addiction. I'm getting more sound financial grounding through the bankruptcy plan. I have a series of payments that are tied to the things I own instead of the addiction I had. I'm not spending money on gambling. I'm not spending money on things that are way outside my limits. Bankruptcy plans created in such a way that you are basically accountable. And then I have the chance to have a financially sound future in less than 4 years, once the bankruptcy has been paid off. At the end of the day, so laying out all the cards in front of you, all the bills, all of that. About $2,600 a month, 60 months. That's how much I'm paying. And at the end of that, everything is basically, as that picture would allude to, cut up, taken care of, and I have a chance to live a more sound financial life. It is a sacrifice. This plan is not an easy plan. Far from it. But it's not supposed to be made easy, and there are creditors that need their money. So the plan makes sure I get to them with the protection that I can have through the U.S. Bankruptcy Court. I think about a lot of the things I've done in the last 3 years. And everything I've done that we've talked about on this show is important. I couldn't go on without doing these things. But it doesn't mean that going through them is easy. It's not a pie in the sky. It's not a cakewalk at all. It's tough stuff. But as Jamie alluded to, once that last payment comes in, it will be a glorious day. You just have to get through all of this. And that's what we're doing. Slowly but surely, as we say, one day at a time, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. I think in light of that, it talks about something else that we've talked about on this show previously, and that of codependency, because we're going to talk about the language of letting go. And today's language of letting go has to do with those old-time feelings. Picture yourself swimming, floating peacefully down a gentle stream. All you need to do is relax, breathe, and go with the flow. Suddenly, you become conscious of your situation. Frightened, overwhelmed with what-ifs, your body tenses. You begin to thrash around, frantically looking for something to grab onto. You panic so hard, you start to go under. Then you remember, you're working too hard at this. You don't need to panic. All you need to do is breathe, relax, and go with the flow. You won't drown. Panic is our great enemy. We don't need to become desperate. If overwhelming problems appear in our life, we need to stop struggling. We can tread water for a bit until our equilibrium returns. Then we can go back to floating peacefully down this gentle stream. It is our stream. It is a safe stream. Our course has been charted. All is well. Today, I will relax, breathe, and go with the flow. And that's today's language of letting go. You think about life as something that could be peaceful and serene when we don't get in our own head. But when we're dealing with compulsion, that's what we do more times than not. We do it subconsciously. We get in our own head because we are addicted and we are not treating the reasons why we're addicted. Whether it is a biochemical response, whether it is a mental response, what have you. It's not being treated. So the best thing we can do when we're dealing with something like compulsive gambling or overeating or alcoholism is starting to work inside and trying to figure out exactly why are we doing these things. If it is a biochemical response, then certainly we can get medication for that, or at least work through the proper channels to do that. If it's truly something of a neurological or some sort of psychological thing, we can go get therapy. There are many services out there that can allow us to do that. As we talked to before, journaling, meditation, therapy have all been very important in this journey of the last 3 years and will continue to be, because our mental health is just as important as our physical health. The best thing we can do, as we've said before, is learn from the past but not dwell, because we have the present, and that is truly a gift. Another gift is a surprise. Thursday, I go for an ocrevus infusion. But that doesn't mean that we're not doing a venture forward Thursday night. I have asked a very dear friend to do me an important favor and do a takeover. So Thursday night show will be with Matt Haas, and he is going to talk about how not to give a flip. Because he too has talked before about how we can get stuck in our own head. And sometimes we should just press forward. I would dare say venture forward. But Thursday night, we're going to talk about how not to give a flip. Matt will, and he will be doing an incredible talk with all of you. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Venture Forward. As Matt says, or as Jamie says, this is going to be great. And as Matt says, oh, baby. Oh, baby's right. It's going to be a great talk for sure. And then on Friday, you'll see Matt, but you'll also see Paul, and you'll see me for VF Talks Friday night at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. So again, how not to give a flip. Bring back the graphic, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on Thursday night. And then VF Talks Friday night, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. Some final comments. Matt says this talk is going to be 5 stars. Highly recommend. That's not only what he says, that's also what Zagat says. So go check out the Zagat guide and also all the review sites. He's phenomenal. Matt is phenomenal. And Matt, you're a great guy. I can't wait to see your talk. You are going to be phenomenal. I love you, bro. Thank you for doing this. Matt also says, if you don't love my talk on Thursday, you'll get twice your money back. So there you go. You got a double money back guarantee for Thursday. To which Jamie says, good luck Thursday with 4 orange hearts. Oh, man. But until then, I'm going to say the same thing I say at the end of every Venture Forward and VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. Matt will see you Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for the next episode of the Venture Forward, and I will see you for VF Talks Friday night at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. Have a wonderful night. I love you all. Fly be free.